World Carnivorous Plant Day. We're so excited that carnivorous plants have their own day. Thanks so much to the International Carnivorous Plant Society for doing that. If you're watching this, you probably already know about them and all the great work that they do. But there is a whole society dedicated to carnivorous plants. This international has members all over the entire world. We belong to it for like, I don't even know, forever, since it started. Anyways, today I thought a lot of our plants are just starting to grow. And so there's not a whole lot in this temperate house to show off, as you can see, except for my pepper plants. Don't be afraid to branch out and obsess about new things. So I thought what we're doing right now is actually kind of an interesting video to talk about, which is we are repotting our entire Venus flytrap collection. Now we're almost all done, but I still have this big pot of typicals. Now when we say typical, we mean it's not a named cultivar, it's not red, it's not dentate, it's just like kind of a regular bread and butter Venus flytrap. And so when you see typical, that's what it means. It's not like typical, but just more like a normal one. So this is actually a bowl that we used to have on display when we were open to the public, sore subject I know, but if you were lucky enough to be one of the few, or many, that made it into the nursery, you probably even saw this growing there. Usually in the spring and summer, it has tall summer traps, a cloud of them. You can't even see the pot, and they're this tall. And even these tiny little guys are gonna do that all over again. I'm gonna try and hit a lot of basic things because I don't really know what your expertise is. You know, I know this will be old hat to a lot of you, but I wanna talk about some of the basics too, of course, because this is such a general audience video. So underneath here is a little pseudobulb, and that's where the Venus flytrap stores all of its energy for the winter. Now they're native to North and South Carolina, where it can be very cold in the wintertime. And of course the day shortens up, and sometimes the water around them will even freeze. And so they shrink down and store all their energy in starch in the bulb. And we'll see what that looks like in a second. From the top, they don't look like too much. And we ship a lot of Venus flytraps. We never stop shipping. We ship every single day, Monday through Friday. We have to get 100 orders out every single day. And in the wintertime, we hear an awful lot about what is this tiny thing that you sent us. It's kind of like shipping wet cats. And everyone's like, this isn't the cat that I ordered. This doesn't look anything like the picture. So I did want to talk about that and just show you that you can tell these old traps that we haven't pulled off were very long. Look at that. They were standing up like that, and like I said, it was a whole cloud of tall summer traps. And we call them summer traps because they're generally made in the summer. The first traps, like these ones, are the very first new ones. They're usually low lying to the ground like that, and they're just trying to catch a couple bugs, maybe get a little bit more energy, catch some fertilizer so that they can make those tall summer traps. And so we start off with these lower spring traps. And then if they're gonna flower, they'll often do that now too. I don't really see any flower stalks coming on this one for some reason, but if you see like a little asparagus guy sticking up straight up out of your plant, that's a new flower stalk. There's two options on those. You can pinch them off and save all that energy for the traps. Plants are all about energetics. So a flower is one of the most expensive things, energy-wise, a plant or a Venus flytrap can do. I always equate it to pregnancy for women. That's something that we can kind of understand. So if you cut that off, your traps will be bigger, faster, more amazing. And so most of you will choose to do that. And it's unfortunate because there's not one here. But usually they're a little tiny asparagus, and I'll just pinch it off, and that's it. Sometimes they try again a month later, you can pinch that one off too, but usually it's an early thing. And they do that so that they don't catch their pollinators. It's really interesting. Carnivorous plants have to somehow get around this idea of catching bugs and killing them, and also using bugs to pollinate their flowers. And they do that with a couple different ways. One of them is temporally, so flowers come up first, and then the tall traps, and then also color. So the traps are dark red, and the flowers are white. And so whatever it is that's attracted to the flowers is probably less attracted to the traps. Also, spatially they're separated. So the flower stalks normally when they're open will be about this high, far above all the traps. And that gives the little pollinators a pretty good shot getting to those flowers and then flying away safely. So we're gonna bare root this guy, break it all down. I'll show you how we repot it and get it ready for the spring. And we get a lot of questions too about when is the best time to repot my Venus flytraps. And the answer is now. When they look like this is the absolute perfect time to transplant them. And people always want a date, but you know, it changes every year. If we have a really rainy winter like the one we've had now, they'll probably be 2 weeks, 3 weeks behind. If you live in a much colder area than we do, they'll definitely be 2 or 3 weeks behind. If it's super hot and we don't get any rain, sometimes they'll pop up super early. And so I always encourage you to participate in this positive feedback loop of nurturing plants. It isn't a date, it isn't a specific time. It's about observing with your eyes, seeing what they're doing, taking those messages from this thing that can't even talk. In a way, you're communicating with it. You're seeing what they're doing, and they're using that information to give them what they need. And that's the real mastery of growing plants. I don't have a million alarms or calendars set up on my phone to tell me when to do all this stuff. I'm looking with my eyes all the time to see what they're doing and adjusting my care accordingly. So when you first start to see these first spring traps emerge is the best time to do it. And that's because if you do it in the winter when they're not going to grow, you're disturbing them, and then they have to sit for a couple months in fresh soil, and they're more likely to rot or have problems. If we do this in 2 or 3 weeks more, and I should say, right now, it's the very first day of April. Now, if I do these even probably 2 weeks later, the days will be longer, the sun will be more intense, and they'll be much farther in growth. Because like I said, there is a pseudobulb underneath that soil that's pushing all this energy into those traps. And so if you order a dormant Venus flytrap from us, just wait. You'll be shocked how fast they grow and push up all those new traps. So if I do it then, they're gonna shock up like you can't believe. And then that hot sun is gonna cook them. So we've been in this big hurry to get all these guys transplanted in just this 1 week. And I'll show you all of our collection after this so you can see what a big job that is for us. When I was a little boy, there was only one type of Venus flytrap, the typicals. And there were no dark reds. There were no dentes. There were none of that. Not all the millions of special ones there are now. Now, I think we have probably approaching 400 different Venus flytraps, and I add to that every single day. There's another shipment of new ones on the way right now. There's an unbelievable diversity in these things now. For those of you that are new, there is only one species of Venus flytrap that exists in the wild. An interesting thing to think about is there were probably other species of Venus flytraps. It would be incredibly rare for a lineage like this to evolve only as one species over the millions of years that took. And Venus flytraps are paleo-endemic, which means that they've been native to North and South Carolina for millions of years. So a fun thing to think about is what were those old archaic prototypes of Venus flytraps look like? The half sundew, half Venus flytraps. And maybe there were even 10, 20 different species of Venus flytraps for a while with different looks and different things and different flowers. We don't know, but this is the one that we have. And then mankind has taken so many, by careful crossbreeding, you can tease out dark reds, mutants, toothies, all kinds of crazy stuff. And we're still to this day trying to make new crazy stuff, and that's half the fun. I encourage you to try. And just to touch back about flowers, because I forgot this part, if you don't want to pinch them off, you can collect those seeds and sow them to grow new Venus flytraps. And when you do that, you can't call it by whatever it was you collected it by, unless it's a typical. But if you collected B52 seeds, when you grow those, you can no longer call those B52. And if you buy B52 seeds from our webpage, and we do sell an amazing diversity of Venus flytrap seeds on our webpage, you can't call those whatever they say. So those are open pollinated. You'll often see those initials OP, which means open pollinated, which means we don't really know what pollinated it. Sometimes we do specific crosses to get certain things, but we grow all of them outside where they prefer to be. And so very often they're getting pollinated by plants that are next to them, and we don't know what. It doesn't mean that they'll be worse than a B52. Very often they're better than a B52, because maybe it got crossed with Titan, and now it's a B52 by Titan, and that's gonna be one crazy flytrap. Huge, right? But don't call them B52. And we get this a lot, and I see it a lot on Facebook, and you guys are fighting about it. Stop fighting about that. It's okay. but just put an OP on the end. All right, so let's dive in here. Now, we've done some of these videos before, and people are often amazed at how rough we sometimes are with them, and sometimes shocked and appalled. But part of our expertise is knowing what you can do with plants. So much of this is knowing what they can tolerate and how careful you need to be. And we also need to move pretty quick, because I'm doing a lot every single day. We've been working on it, I think this is the 10th day of repotting Venus flytraps. And that's not just me, that's the whole crew. So what I like to do is give a good couple of squeezes on the edge of the pot like this, even a big pot like this. And what that does is it kind of separates the sides of the pot from the soil. There will be some kind of like friction in that, and so it doesn't always want to come out so easy. And you can see a lot of things in here. You can see some Cape Sundews that have popped up in there. We're going to save those and pot them up, and if you guys buy a narrow leaf Cape Sundew from us, sometimes they are little rescue guys from this. And we're not going to repot all these typicals either. I'm going to scale them back to a pot like this because we don't really need all these typicals, and we're not open to the public anymore for anyone to see a big display anyways. And so I'm going to keep them for sentimental reasons, and I keep a lot of things for sentimental reasons. I'm sure you do too. But we're going to break a lot of these off to repot. And so if you buy some typicals from us, they might be this old Calicarn, clone that we've grown for, I think this has been this pot for like, well, it's been repotted, but we've had them like for 20 years. Something cool to think about. And now the risky part is flipping them over. And it's not that risky, so you don't have to freak out about it. There it is. You can see how I just gave loose. I'll use my thumbs to knock it off. There it is. And the peat and perlite, unlike other soils, sticks together pretty darn well, especially after they've been together for a long time. So, and if it does come apart on you, don't freak out. We're gonna pull all this apart anyways, and that's no big deal. You're gonna make a huge mess in your kitchen. Here's a pro tip for you. I was gonna use it today, but it was gonna get in the way of what you could see. This is a little potter's tray, and you can order these on Greenhouse Megastore. And if you don't wanna destroy your kitchen, or your loved ones don't want you to destroy their kitchen, you can use one of these. And they're handy outside, they're handy everywhere. It keeps the cart clean, but we're gonna mess it up today. So, out of here. Oh, there's even a couple Sarracenia in here. Look at that. That's a little dormant Sarracenia seedling. These used to grow right next to the Sarracenia when they were in the greenhouse, and so I bet you they just accidentally went in there. I think there's another one right there. It's a little red spear. The little red spears on your Sarracenia are new pictures, again, for you noobs. So now I'm just going to break this thing open. And I'll start right in the middle and just open it like a book. Ba-dam. And right away, you can see what we're looking for, which are those big pseudobulbs. Look at the size of those. You would never believe from that tiny little trap, this was the winter trap that was out on it all winter. These ones just grew. That tiny little trap is hiding these big pseudobulbs. This is the base of the petiole, or the leaf, and you can see it's white and it's fleshy, it's holding a lot of starch. Animals hold their energy in fat, plants hold their energy in starch. That's why potatoes are so nutritious, because they're just saving their starch. And now I'm going to start pulling these all apart. I'll pull that one loose, and then a really handy thing to have around is a tub of water like this. Again, you can destroy your kitchen sink, but your loved ones would be happier if you didn't, and you won't have to call a plumber when you get all that peat moss in your trap. So I just give it a little rinse like that, and you can see the peat moss falls right off. And then I'll go ahead and clean off the old leaves from last year. And so I'll just pull that off. This is an old flower stalk, pull that off. And then I just start going through them really fast. I'm gonna put them right back in that bowl for now. And it actually won't take me that long. Just give it a little splash, pull off a couple traps, toss it in. Do-do-do, do-do-do. And then I'll pull off some of these other guys. Like that's a little Sarracenia seedling. There's no reason to throw him away, so we'll pot him up later. I'll put him off to the side. And there's another little one. You can tell from the Sarracenia roots, all Sarracenia roots look alike, with these little, tiny little scraggler roots off the side. And these are all the old pictures from last year, but the new picture is coming up right there. It's that red spear. And it's going to be probably 2 or 3 times taller than those were last year. It's kind of cool. And there's a Cape Sundew. I'm not going to clean those off, but I'll just put them off to the side and we'll give those to our potter to pot up. And I'll just keep going through these. and finding every little Venus flytrap I can. Why do we repot? And how often do we repot? So it's a good idea if you have the time and ability to repot these guys every single year. Because in the wild, very often they would burn, and that would clear out vegetation and moss for them so they can grow. But unless you're setting things on fire at your house, we don't have that mechanism. And the moss does start to build up. It starts off very pretty and useful because it will keep the peat moss from being churned up in the rain. But as the years build up, that moss that grows on top will start to get really, like almost like a Brillo pad. There'll be an inch of like old moss in between the peat moss and the top of the soil, and it starts to make this thick pad that the Venus flytraps have to grow out of. And that's not so hot. It starts to elongate them, and it also gets a little hydrophobic, which means hard to wet. And of course, Venus flytraps love water, and so you don't want that either. And so the frequent repotting is a great way to get rid of that. And we do that, we're all set up now to do our Venus flytraps every year, which is great news for you, because as I pull these apart, you probably saw, like here, come in here close, Daniela. You can see this was the original plant from last year, but then it had so much energy, it made this second plant off to the side. And then you can break it off. Sometimes on these big ones, I'll leave it, but I just want to show you. If you break it away, that's 2 flytraps now. And the extras, we're going to sell for your collections. And so us repotting our Venus flytrap collection every single year means every single year you will have an opportunity to buy one of every single variety that we grow, which is practically all of them. I keep all the old classics, and then I'm also, like I said, adding all the new ones that you guys want too. Like we have all the green jaw ones and all the weird ones from Europe, Asmodeus, all the diflora ones, like Carboni, whatever it is. It means hot coals in Italian, I remember that. Daniela probably remembers. Anyways, we have all those, and as we repot them, we're potting off lots and lots. Daniela turns behind her there. Those are all the ones for you. Now we're not going to sell them like that. Lots of other nurseries, they sell plants as soon as they pot them up. And we don't do that. That's not setting you up for success. Very often, if you see a bare root or a potted option on there, that usually means, not always, but it usually means that when you hit potted, they're just potting it up that day and shipping it to you. And that will work. But when you're potting up, when you're buying plants, the momentum that they have on them is really important. If you buy a little plant that hasn't had time to build up that momentum under expert care, it might be hard for you to build that momentum back up into it. And so we take the time to add our expert momentum to every single plant that we sell, so that when you get it, you're gonna feel like a wizard when you get this thing and it grows giant traps in a month. And that's what we want. We don't want a disappointing, because lots of people, if it doesn't do exactly what they want right away in this age of TikTok and no attention span, lots of people are gonna drop this pretty fast. And we don't want that. We want everyone to love growing carnivorous plants. We've done so much to popularize these plants with Peter's book, The Savage Garden, of course, all the videos that we do. And I actually really hate the nurseries out there that sell things that aren't setting you up for success, because if you're unlucky enough to stumble across one of them somehow on the internet, you're gonna not have a great experience. And people who don't have a great experience don't come back. And that's a shame, because there's no reason you can't. You can grow Venus flytraps, American pitcher plants, sundews, outdoors in most of the country, certainly spring through summer. I'm gonna have to do something else for in the winter. And we do a lot of videos about what to do in the wintertime. So I won't hit that too much. But I will say, you don't have to do too much. Plants are not as inanimate or senseless as people think they are. They actually, in a way, have more senses than we do. They can tell up from down, even without eyes. And they can feel gravity. They have all kinds of senses. They can feel touch. We know that now. They're totally understanding that they're being touched every time I touch them. There's a calcium release on that. It's very similar to the nerve impulse that closes Venus flytraps. But they know what time of year it is. You don't have to whisper it in their ear. You don't have to do anything special. You don't have to force them under lights. They have a special mechanism. I think all plants. Can't think of an exception. All plants have a special mechanism separate from photosynthesis that is measuring the day length every single day. And that clock can keep going and keep that time even if you put it in the dark for up to a week, which is pretty cool. That's a leaf that broke off. We're going to save that for later. I'll put that off to the side. And if a leaf breaks off, don't freak out. That's okay. In fact, another good reason to do this now is leaf cuttings. Some of you don't want a million carnivorous plants. Some of you are happy with the one that you have and you're not trying to sell them, and so you don't want to make a million of them. Maybe that's more than you need. But if you want to make more, like if you want to end up with a big bowl like this, you can do that pretty quickly by propagation. That's what propagation means. It means making more plants. And you can do that a lot of different ways. With animals, they really, well, higher animals, so to speak. I mean, sea anemones and things like that. Other things have asexual reproduction. But with animals, asexual reproduction is fairly rare. But with plants, almost every single plant, maybe every single plant, can be reproduced asexually. And leaf cuttings is an excellent way to do that with your Venus flytraps. Now I have all this old dirt. I'm just kind of do a quick look and make sure I didn't miss anybody in here. You can usually see those white, there's a Cape Sunday, let's say the Cape Sunday. You can usually see those white pseudobulbs pretty easily. Yeah, I think that's all those. Push that to the side. I still have one more chunker here. All carnivorous plants have roots, but they don't have a lot of them. There's exceptions to that probably, although again, I can't think of one off the top of my head. But that's all the roots even a big Venus flytrap has. And they kind of tend to shed their roots. There's no roots on here from 3 years ago. These are the roots that grew last year, and you can see they're still on there. And these are the new roots from this year. And there's no 3-year-old roots. And so don't freak out if there's no roots. And you actually don't have to be very gentle with them either when they're like this, because it's very hard to shock plants that don't have a lot of leaves. Transplant shock, well, there's a very delicate balance between roots that take up water and leaves that lose them. And transplant shock is generally a matter of doing so much damage to the roots that the leaves can't take up enough water, and that's why they look wilty when they shock. So if they shock, removing some leaves can get that delicate balance back in tune. That's another good reason to do them now, is because it's really hard to have shock when they're just starting to grow. It's just not enough leaves to do that. And they still have all their roots from last year and this year on there. There's another one, couple that split into two just super easily. And that's asexual reproduction too, where they're just budding off those little rhizomes into new ones. And they do that. If they catch a lot of bugs, there's only so much energy they can put into that one rhizome, pseudobulb. And so they'll make a new one to put more energy into it. And that's pretty cool too. I think there's just like 3 more left in here. Ba-ba-ba. Bada bing, bada boom. Okay. Push that off to the side, to the front. The other reason to do this is weeds. We try to keep things pretty clean around here, so we're always weeding anyways. If you grow a lot of plants, you probably familiarize yourself with the Zen art of menial work. And I encourage you to embrace that too. Don't view this as a chore. View it as something to be enjoyed. It really is fun work. Even when it's overwhelming for me and there's so much to do, it's still fun work. And view it that way. It's easier to do. Everything, just because you have to do it doesn't mean it's a chore. When you get in here, you can see, I think that's a little sedge that's gotten started in there somehow. So I don't want that going in there. I don't know what that was, but we definitely don't want it. All kinds of little things will pop up from airborne seeds or a neighboring pot that maybe had a weed or two in it. And that's how weeds get out of control. And pull those weeds when you see them, because when you come back to it, it'll probably be a much bigger problem. But constant repotting really does fix it. Look at that tiny little guy. So that's just a little baby. And they could be much smaller than that, of course. All right, so now what I've ended up with is this really lovely salad. And if you whip up a nice vinaigrette with balsamic, maybe a little mustard in there, it's delicious. Don't eat them. Don't eat them. Although you could. They're not poisonous, that we know it. So, before I pot these up, let me talk a little bit about leaf cuttings, because I see this guy right here. So, that's a leaf that fell off. And another nice thing about having this water is you can clean your hands really easily. The peat moss just comes right off, because it's not real dirt, it's just moss. So let's go back to this. So you can see the trap is right there, and you can see there's a separation, kind of like almost like an onion layer or something, that goes all the way down to the base. And again, that's where the starch or the energy is stored. And to make a new plant, you want as much of that energy as you can get. And so try not to do this. See, I can't even do it now, but see how I broke that off very high up? That still might take, but propagation is a matter of odds, and you want to give yourself the best odds as possible. And so that could work, but what will work much, much better is gently peeling all the way down. So sometimes what I'll do is I'll pull it, and I'll get my finger in between there, and I'll just force it all the way down, pop it at the base. That has the entire leaf and the entire petiole, and you can see how thick that is on the tip of my finger. It's very fleshy, and that's where all the little energy is stored, just like a tater. I like to take 2 or 3 leaves off of each trap. And the ones you want to take are the ones from last year, or the new ones, but try to avoid taking this one here that has a new trap coming, because it's going to be split between finishing that trap and putting energy into the new plant that it can make at the base. So I like one that's already formed up, or even a little bit older. Like, that's a good one. So I'll peel that one off. And this one that I broke off came off of it too. You also want to take an outside one. And you can see pretty clearly which ones the outside ones are. But if you pull one from the middle, you can pull this whole thing apart, which is okay, but most of you want to keep the original. And it's okay to take one like this where the trap is burned off too. That'll actually still work. I forgot it, but a little rooting hormone goes a long way. If you wanted to dip the end of that in some rooting hormone, that's a terrific idea. If you don't, it might still work. But like I said, propagation is a matter of odds. So if you do 100 of them, or 1,000 of them, or 10,000 of them, like we do here, you want as many as they can to work. This is a dibber. It's a horticultural tool with a ridiculous name. And basically, it's just a plastic finger. I still mostly use my fingers, but when you're doing it for a week, sometimes your cuticles start to pull back, your fingernails get all choked up with peat. So if you don't want that, you can buy these dibbers on Amazon, or I bet you Greenhouse Megastore has them too. You can make your little holes in the peat moss, just like that, for your leaf cuttings. And then I'm just gonna plant it back almost like it was. So I'll put it in there about that deep, and then I'm gonna squeeze the peat moss all around it. Bonsoir. And so that is a Venus flytrap leaf cutting. And we could do a couple more just to see it happen. And I squeeze it down. If you make the clicking noise, it helps. So I'm not going to do all these because it's already stretching out. But, and again, they're just typical Venus flytraps. So now what to do with this? If I put this on the bench with the other Venus flytraps, they're probably just going to fry up and die. It has no roots, and so that delicate balance between roots and leaf has been utterly destroyed. It's all leaf. It all wants to lose water, and there's not very much to take it in. It can suck a little water up through the end of that petiole like a flower in a vase, but that's it. So high humidity is important, and a great setup for this little pot full of leaf cuttings is, quiet here, is to put it in a nice clean tray like this. And again, cleanliness is important. NICU isn't dirty. That's where they keep the babies at the hospital. And you don't want your plant NICU to be dirty either. It was a little dirty because I couldn't find a clean one. But you put that on top so that it has high humidity. Now, this is a little greenhouse, and we're all pretty familiar with the greenhouse effect. You don't want to cook them. Now, plant cooking is different than animal cooking. If it gets 90, even 100-ish degrees in here, that's probably not going to cook anybody. They can be very warm. And actually that warmth, since plants are essentially cold-blooded like a lizard, they're not making their own warmth. And chemical, biological reactions happen faster when it's warmer. And so you want it to be warm. The warmer it is, the faster these become plants. But not too warm because you don't want to cook them. 80s or 90s is nice. And too much sun will cook them. So I'm not going to leave this right here. If I was going to do this, I might put him under the bench down here. Especially on the edge there, you can see it's getting some light from the side, but it's not going to get all daylight. So it can still make some sugar through photosynthesis to feed that new leaf that it's making, and those new plants that it's making, but it's not going to cook them. And the new plants are going to form right off the end here, right in the front usually. You'll start to see new little pseudobulbs forming with tiny little traps, and that's how you know there's some success. Don't freak out if this starts to go black. Often, even if this starts to turn black, it will still make new little plantlets. So that's leaf cuttings. And we don't have to do that again, but if you want to make more, you can. So let's pot these up. Now, of course, I want to keep the biggest ones for myself, so usually really quick. I like to put about 9 back into a pot that size. And so really quickly, I'm going to pull out the 9 biggest ones for me. But there's still going to be some chonkers in here for you. This is a nice big one. Look at that. I'll definitely put that one in the middle. And I just kind of lay them there. Oh yeah, gosh, look at that one. That one's right on the edge of turning into 2. So that's cool. Put that there. And what else do I like? The rest of these are all mostly the same size, so I guess it doesn't matter too much. And that one. And that one. What else we got? I think that one. Oh, stay with me. Stay with me here, friend. These little runaway Venus flytraps. I got room for 2 more, I think. That one. I like this one. Ah, there's another big one. Nice. But again, even on this really chunky one, almost no roots. Also, don't freak out. I see these brown. That's just old leaves. Don't look at them so close that you're freaking out about every little thing. I'm not doing that, and it's not really a recipe for success. That kind of energy, it really creates more problems than it finds. Although you do want to keep tabs on them, just don't look at them like this. Look at them like this. That's one of my jokes when people ask about little problems that aren't really problems. I say, I think what the problem is that you're looking at them like this, and you need to look at them right about there. Because I'm not seeing all those brown spots, and that's what expertise is. So now I know how many I want. I'm going to set them off to the side. Like I said, I'm not a big dibber user, so I'm just going to make a hole like that. There's a direction to this. So you can see the older leaves are back here, and the newer leaves are here. So it's creeping along. So try not to push it against it so it's growing into the edge of the pot. It's no big deal if you do, but it's nicer if it has more room to go. So I'm going to kind of help these roots go down into the pot, just like that. I'm going to press against the firm edge. And then I'm just going to close in around it like that. And then I'll do the next one. And even when you start off with a full pot, don't ask me why, magic I guess, you're going to need to add soil. So I have some soil here for when that happens, but you'll see it started off full and I'm adding volume with these Venus flytraps, but as I squidge it, see there's a big hole there all of a sudden. And so you want to have some fresh soil on hand. Don't reuse your old soil. Some people do, some nurseries do. I super hate reusing soil. It's okay to dump this for your blueberries, your garden beds, and it's an excellent, excellent addition to garden beds because it holds so much moisture, but don't reuse soil. If there were any problems starting in there, you want to get rid of them, not pour them into the new pot. So get rid of that. And then I'm just going to squidge her in there like that. And that's what this is for. One of my tricks is I kind of get it where it is, and then I just take this little chunk and put it where it should be and push down. Don't worry about pushing down too hard. You don't want to push, like, don't be crazy. You don't want to push so hard that you're crushing things, but these are really, really firm. Like, I don't know, like a marble or something, like they're hard. So you don't have to worry about crushing or breaking them. And if a leaf comes off while you're doing this, also don't freak out. Please don't freak out. It's okay. The plants want to live. As long as you follow basically what I just did here, they will. So don't freak out. That ruins this experience too. It's more fun, it's better if you're just having fun and flowing and doing these little guys, and you're not cringing and contracting every time something goes wrong. Don't contract when you make a mistake. I was in band, and they always teach you in band to make your mistakes loud. And then when you do, don't freak out. You can't stop playing the song because you made a mistake. You gotta keep playing that song, and you gotta keep repotting these guys. Be gentle, be careful, but please don't freak out, because that's no fun. This is actually supposed to be fun, remember? And it is fun. I've done this since I was 11 years old. I still have my childhood bowl of Venus flytraps over there. They were all the flytraps I acquired when I was a teenager. And it's been so fun taking care of them. And I can hardly believe it, but I'm about to turn 46, which means that those Venus flytraps have been with me for 30 years. It's amazing. And I've changed a little bit, but they haven't. And that's pretty cool too. And plants don't really have a lifespan either. There's no reason for these Venus flytraps not to be grown by whoever takes over this nursery from me in 50, 100 years, whatever. They'll still going. Plants don't really get old. So, here we go. Now, I should have brought a watering can over here. But you can kind of rinse them off with some fresh water to clean off those leaves. If you don't, it's okay. Unless you're in Arizona or something, the rain will do it for you anyways. And we'll kind of clean them off a little bit just for the photo op, so they don't look too skanky. And see, all these ones I have left over. So those are gonna be for you. And then a word about tags. So, tags get old in the sun and they break. Permanent marker fades. Pencil and tags, that's the best system so far. I always say I wish there was a better system than tags, but so far there isn't until some genius person invents one, some computer thing. We'll be using these. So what I like to do is, here's a super pro tip if you want to keep track of what you have. And first off, if you're new to the hobby, keep your tags. You might not care today, but once you catch the bug and you get hooked on this thing, you're gonna want to add more. And a lot of people, for some reason, especially new people, take all the tags out because they think that they're ugly when they get here. And then they message us in a year and they're like, you know, I kind of care which ones I have now, and I don't know what to get because I don't know which ones I have, and can you tell me which ones these are? And sometimes I can because I've looked at these things so long. But lots of times you can't. So keep these tags, even if they're ugly. And I'm gonna show you another thing too. 2 tags is better than 1. So I'm just gonna write typical on there, typical Venus flytraps. Just like that. And then I'll put that one up here like this so that we can easily read it and see what I have. Now, in about, well, by next year for sure, the sun is gonna totally demolish this tag. And then when you walk by, it'll snap right off, and the important part will fall off. So you can do 2 things. You can keep this same tag, and you can do something really neurotic and persnickety, which is write it twice. So at the base here, a lot of times I'll write typical down here too. Typical. Like that. So then when I stick this in here, when the top breaks off next year, I can still pull up that broken shard and find out that it was just a typical Venus flytrap. And the other thing you can do, if you want to get really nuts, which we are here, in fact, I have everyone who works here pretty much keep every tag that's ever been in there, because any little tag shard that's left over is often the difference between me remembering what it was and not ever being able to find out ever again. This one, I'm gonna put all the way down in here. So if you squeeze the side, there's that opening, I'm just gonna toss that in there, I can't even see it. And if you hate the tags so much and you don't wanna see on a regular basis what they are, you can bury both of them, just like that. And that looks better. Arguably, that looks better. Another thing I'll say is don't be afraid to put these in pretty pots. Peter D'Amato, who is our founder and the author of The Savage Garden, he was really the first one in a sea of kind of, no offense, dorky old plant guys who really love to put them in a plastic pot like this. And plastic is a nice thing because it won't react with the soil at all, and it doesn't lose any water. So if you don't mind the plastic pots, I mean, we put them in plastic pots. But if you're a nice, if you're, Martha Stewart, don't be afraid to put these in a beautiful glazed ceramic pot. I still encourage it to be glazed. It doesn't have to be glazed on the inside, just a glaze on the outside means it has a hard fire. And I still encourage you to have it have holes in the bottom so you can set the whole thing into a tray of water. Because although they will grow in an undrained pot, when it's hot in the summertime, you will have to water that every day. And if you miss a day, you're gonna lose them. And that's gonna be a super bummer. So find a glazed pot with holes in the bottom. Anyways, happy World Carnivorous Plant Day again. I hope you guys enjoyed repotting this Venus flytrap for me, and I hope you learned a whole lot so that you won't make some of the same mistakes that I've made over the years. And the only difference, I've gained all this expertise by making all the mistakes. And so again, don't freak out when you make mistakes. That's the road to expertise. Now, we're done doing this, and so we're gonna cut for a second, and I'm gonna take you on over so we can just check out this big, massive undertaking of repotting all of ours. So here I am, standing in the middle of my Venus flytrap collection. And I hope, my personal hope for you is someday you can know the deep satisfaction of standing in the middle of your Venus flytrap collection. We have about 3 4x8 hydroponic tables. Every single pot is a different cultivar or seed-grown plant that I'm assessing in the possibility of making a new cultivar. And you can see we have them growing here, sitting in rainwater or distilled water, out in full hot sun. Now, if you're somewhere where it's a little hotter than here, like it's in the 90s or 100s, you might give them some afternoon shade, but Venus flytraps love full sun. Can you guys imagine how much work this all was? But again, fun work.